Hi everyone, I'm Tony.
Look at these Nike shoes you're wearing. You took one off and pressed it right against my face, forcing me to smell it.
In 2016, a murder case shocked the entire nation. Yu Huan, the protagonist of this case, also became the first convicted murderer in Chinese history to spark a nationwide outcry demanding justice for him the moment he was imprisoned. A loan shark gang showed up to collect a debt with brute force. Yu Huan watched in horror as they pulled down their pants and humiliated his mom right in front of him. He snapped, couldn't take it anymore, and stabbed the attackers with a knife. The result? 1 dead, 3 injured. A total tragedy. The court convicted Yu Huan of intentional harm and handed down a life sentence. This verdict caused an absolute firestorm nationwide. Public opinion flipped completely. Everyone thought Yu's actions were self-defense. He shouldn't have been locked up at all. In the end, Yu Huan's sentence was reduced from life in prison to just 5 years. This case is hands down the biggest landmark in China's judicial progress, driven by public outcry. But what really led to this violent killing? Let's uncover the truth together. Yu Huan was born in 1994 into a business family. His mom, Su, was a well-known local entrepreneur who ran Yuanda Industry and Trade, a company that made and sold steel. Yu Huan grew up wealthy, but unlike the stereotypical spoiled rich kid, he was shy and quiet. Here's a pattern I've noticed. Quiet people, they're way more likely to do something totally unexpected. In high school, Yu Huan had his eye on a Nokia phone. Most kids would just beg their parents for money, but not Yu Huan. He got a job on the assembly line at his mom's factory and bought that phone with his own hard-earned cash. But Yu Huan wasn't great at school. He never got into college. His mom figured, instead of letting him laze around, he might as well learn the ropes at the factory. After all, he'd take over someday anyway. So, with his mom's arrangement, Yu Huan became an entry-level worker. After a few years of learning, he worked his way up to management. If everything had gone smoothly, Yu Huan would have taken over the factory from his mom in a few years and followed the life path his parents laid out for him. But as we all know, life loves to throw curveballs. By 2015, steel prices in China had been crashing hard for 4 straight years. Su's company took a massive hit. She was stuck with no way to get financing or loans. The company bank account was empty, but the debts kept piling up. Su got listed as a credit delinquent by the courts multiple times, which meant she couldn't borrow a penny from the banks. Desperate to pay off her debts, Su borrowed from every friend and relative she had. She even tried private loans, but barely got any money. She was about to lose everything she'd worked for her whole life. That's when a guy named Wu showed up like a savior, saying he could lend her all the money she needed. Su, at her wit's end, agreed happily. After borrowing 1.35 million RMB, about $200,000, she bowed repeatedly to thank Wu. Little did she know, her worst nightmare was just beginning. Su had no clue that Wu, who called himself a real estate company boss, was actually just a street thug. Wu dropped out before finishing junior high and ran with the wrong crowd. Then, by a stroke of luck, he hit a huge windfall, and that's when he got into the loan shark business. He hired a crew of enforcers to collect debts for him and soon became known as the local gang boss. Since Su lived far away, she had no idea who Wu really was. She just thought he was the guy who could help her get through this crisis. Their agreement, Su had to pay 10% interest on the principal every month. That's about $20,000. Meaning, in 10 months, the interest would be more than the principal itself. Su figured if she poured that money into the factory, she'd turn things around once the steel market bounced back. But reality, it was the total opposite. Su got deeper and deeper into debt, so deep she lost everything she owned. It's crazy how a single error can make a group of people rich and destroy another group just as quickly. By 2016, Su had already paid Wu $260,000 plus a house worth $100,000. But she still owed $20,000 in interest. And at this point, she was completely broke. But Wu was a loan shark. Money was his only priority. After hounding her repeatedly and getting nothing, he sent his debt-collecting crew to resort to violence. Illegal detention, physical abuse, humiliation, they'd do whatever it took to get their money. Du was the crew's leader. Following Wu's orders, he showed up at Su's house with 10 enforcers, forcing her to pay up immediately. Su didn't want trouble, but she had no money left. She begged Du for a few more days, promised she'd pay as soon as she could. But Du was a veteran of violence. He'd lost all sense of mercy. He ordered his men to shove Su's head into a toilet that still had their fresh feces in it. Traumatized and humiliated, Su called the police multiple times. The cops showed up, sure, but they only gave the crew a verbal warning and left. Du dealt with the police all the time. He knew exactly how it worked. When it came to economic disputes, the police couldn't get too involved. And sure enough, the cops just said, "Collect your debt, but no fighting," and walked away. Su even called the mayor's hotline, but got the same answer. It's a civil dispute, they couldn't help. Since they didn't get the money the day before, Du and his crew showed up at Su's company the next day. They set up a barbecue right at the front gate, drinking beer and blocking the entrance, completely shutting down the company's operations. After the workers left for the day, Du and his men cornered Su and Yu Huan in the office. Then, right in front of Su, they started slapping Yu Huan hard across the face. They hurled all kinds of vulgar insults at Su, even mocking her by saying Yu Huan wasn't her real son. The constant beating and disgusting taunts pushed the 20-something Yu Huan over the edge. But he was alone against 11 grown men. They pinned him to the couch, and he couldn't move an inch. But Du's humiliation of Yu and Su only got worse. First, Du took off Yu Huan's shoes and pressed them against Su's face. Then he flicked cigarette ash onto her chest. Yu Huan watched his mom being tortured, powerless to stop it, letting out a desperate roar from the bottom of his throat. That's when the night security guard secretly called the police. Soon, 3 cops arrived at the scene. For Su and Yu Huan, it was a glimmer of hope. Su pointed out Du and his men, telling the cops they'd beaten her son and insulted her with filthy language. But Du lied through his teeth, saying none of it happened. The cops could tell he was bullshitting. Yu Huan had obvious bruises all over his body. But then, Du hit them with that classic line, "You borrow money, you pay it back, it's only right." And just like that, the cops had nothing to say. Economic disputes, they couldn't intervene too much. The cops left the office after saying, "No fighting." Yu Huan and Su tried to follow them out, but Du and his men blocked their way. Little did they know, the 3 cops hadn't actually left. They were calling their superiors for backup. After all, they were up against 11 guys. The call only lasted a minute, then the cops headed back to the office to handle the dispute. But in that one short minute, everything inside the office changed completely. Du thought the cops were gone for good, so he let loose, humiliating Su in an even more horrific way. Du pulled down his own pants and did something unspeakable. That sickening act pushed Yu Huan over the edge. He completely snapped. With a burst of unexpected strength, Yu Huan broke free from the 2 men holding him down. He grabbed a fruit knife from the cabinet and stabbed Du repeatedly. In just a few seconds, Du had multiple stab wounds to his abdomen. The other 10 debt collectors froze in shock. Before most of them could react, Yu Huan charged at them with the knife. The 11 tough guys scattered in terror. Yu Huan only stopped when the cops rushed back and standing there, panicked and gasping for breath. By then, 4 of the 11 men was seriously injured. The cops immediately called an ambulance. But Du, the most seriously hurt, refused to wait. He insisted on driving himself to the hospital. And here's the crazy part. There was a hospital just a few minutes away, but Du chose to drive all the way to a hospital in the suburbs. That detour cost him his life. He bled out and went into shock, dying before he could get treatment. After Du's death, his family sued Yu Huan for murder, demanding $1.2 million in compensation. In court, Yu Huan's lawyer fought tooth and nail for him, listing every single crime Du had committed as a debt collector. Breaking into homes, illegal detention, violent threats. Du had broken the law over and over again. When the media covered the case, it blew up online, drawing massive attention from netizens across the country. Everyone agreed, if you watched your mom being humiliated like that, it would be impossible to stay calm. Legally, Du might not have deserved to die, but morally, he got exactly what he had coming. But in the first trial, the court still convicted Yu Huan of intentional harm and sentenced him to life in prison. Their reasoning, even though Du and his men had illegally detained Su and Yu Huan, they didn't use weapons or threaten their lives, so Yu Huan's stabbing didn't count as self-defense. That verdict was like a stone thrown into a lake, instantly stirring up 1,000 waves. And when Yu Huan said this in court, if your mum was humiliated right in front of you, could you stand it? It struck a chord with millions of people. That one sentence became a national debate. When your mom is being violated, do you choose to be a law-abiding citizen or a filial son who breaks the law to protect her? In 2017, under massive public pressure, the court was forced to hold a public retrial. Su testified in court, accusing Du of sexual assault. Yu Huan's lawyer also presented new evidence. After Du was stabbed, he refused to wait for help and drove himself to a farther hospital. When he got there, he even got into a fight with the security guard, missing his chance to get life-saving treatment. So Du's death wasn't entirely Yu's fault. He was responsible for his own bad decisions too. In the end, Yu Huan's life sentence was reduced to 5 years in prison. The 3 cops who were at the scene that day, they were punished for failing to handle the dispute properly. Some were demoted, others were fired. And what about Wu, the loan shark and gang boss? He didn't get away with it either. The court convicted him of multiple crimes and sentenced him to 25 years in prison. Thanks to good behavior in prison, Yu Huan got 6 reduced sentences over the years. He was finally released on the 28th of November 2020. And that's the end of the case. Now, I want to ask you guys, what would you have done if you were in Yu Huan's shoes? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.